Ever get that feeling, you've come across something really unique,
Mm.
and it's got this energy about it that you can't quite put your finger on. It just sparks a deep curiosity in you.
Hmm.
Like you just want to dive in and figure out what makes it tick. Get to the very heart of it.
I know exactly what you mean.
Well, that's exactly the kind of journey we're on today. This time, we're taking a deep dive into the world of Bob Camblin.
Hmm. Now, there's a fascinating figure. I think for a lot of people who follow art, the name is at least somewhat familiar,
Right.
but there's still something kind of enigmatic about him.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, widely recognized for sure, but also controversial,
Mhm.
iconoclastic. Some have even said mysterious.
Definitely.
And his art, well, clearly it resonates with people. It's highly sought after.
It really is. And our listener, always interested in getting to the core of things quickly and efficiently, and we thought Camblin would be the perfect subject for that. Because instead of having to wade through endless articles and books, we've pulled together this really interesting collection of his own words alongside insights into his life and how critics have responded to his work.
That's right. It's a diverse set of sources for this deep dive. We'll be exploring excerpts from Bob Camblin quotes and other mysteries, and those offer a direct look into his very unique way of thinking.
Oh, yeah.
We'll also draw from a biography, which offers kind of the crucial context for his life and his artistic journey. There's also a YouTube transcript that analyzes his painting Moses.
Oh, interesting.
And we've got a really fascinating array of reviews and forewords from books that feature his art. This includes Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, Bob Camblin, Incomplete Works, Volume 1. The spelling on that one is a little unusual.
Right.
And we also have a review of The Art of Everything, which also features some of Camblin's work.
Fantastic.
Mm.
So our aim today is pretty straightforward. To kind of distill the key themes,
Right.
the core insights that emerge directly from Camblin's own voice, and the fascinating context of his life and his art.
I'm excited to jump in.
Okay, let's jump in. We're going to start with some of Camblin's quotes and other mysteries. And the first one this one really jumped out at me.
Yeah.
Fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years perhaps. There's a real sense of, irony there.
Definitely.
What struck you about that quote?
Well, it's that immediate juxtaposition, right? You've
Yeah.
got forever, which is just so absolute.
Right.
And then immediately next to it, the casual, almost like a throwaway line, another 10 years perhaps.
Yeah.
It brings in this very human, almost wry sense of the temporary.
Yeah.
It really makes you question, what we truly consider permanent and for how long can we realistically expect things to last. And I think it's especially interesting coming from an artist, right? Someone whose work, in a way, aims to endure. This almost casual dismissal of permanence, it might give us a hint about some of the tension in Camblin's perspective, a recognition of ephemerality, even while desiring to create lasting work. And maybe that's a seed of something we'll see later when we talk about his embrace of collaborative work or even anonymous art.
Interesting. Then we have this other piece. It's almost poetic. 3 cottonwood trees.
Yeah.
Dense cluster of new branches. Now with them gone, look. It's like this tiny story about loss.
Yeah.
And then that really powerful invitation to, observe, to see what's left.
Exactly. That's what grabbed me about this quote. First, you get that really vivid picture, that vibrancy of new growth, and then just the stark reality. They're gone. And then that final, almost like a command, look.
Right.
Forces you to change your perspective, right? Think about what the absence reveals, what's different now, not just in the landscape, but maybe in a larger sense.
I mean, connecting this to Camblin's work as a whole, with all those themes of metamorphosis and the cyclical nature of life, I think this tiny observation takes on a much larger meaning.
It really does. Now, this next one, it's incredibly sensory. As they approached the memory of songs, and music stopped at the moment the texture of its decay became visible to them. Sad how we all aged at that moment in time. Salt air summer, 1967. It's so specific, those details. But it evokes this universal feeling about, time passing. What stands out to you?
I think what's really powerful here is how he links the fading of this pleasant memory, right?
Yeah.
Those songs and music, to a very physical, tangible experience. It's not just an abstract fading away. It's got this visible texture to it, like you could reach out and touch it. And then saying that everybody aged at that precise moment, Salt Air Summer 1967. It suggests that everyone there was aware of it.
Hmm.
and that there's a shared understanding of the impact of time, not just on memory, but on our physical selves.
Yeah. It makes me wonder how your senses and your memories intertwine to create your understanding of time passing.
That's a really good question. Now, for a little bit of a shift in focus, we have this. Look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic, and you get what you need. Philosophy and art are in both. This is very bold statements. Like he's saying there's a connection between these very different ways of understanding the world. What's your take?
It is bold. It reveals a mind that isn't really bound by the typical ways of dividing up knowledge.
Right.
He's suggesting that those fundamental truths we search for through science by looking at the smallest parts of reality are also present in magic, in those parts of existence that we can't easily explain.
Right.
And he positions philosophy and art as the essential tools, the languages that can explore and bridge those seemingly different territories. I think it speaks to a worldview that's constantly looking for unity, underlying connections.
Yeah. And that idea of a kind of balance comes up again here.
Yeah.
I will stick with common sense and try for the perfectly average view of the universe. I think that will let me enjoy miracles on both sides of science and magic and the nuances of the smear between the whiteness and the blackness, and hope that I can be around when the two meet in the near future and we have an intensely bright gray. And the image of the intensely bright gray, that's really striking.
Isn't it? He's not aiming for those extremes. He doesn't want absolute certainty.
Right.
Not in the purely rational world of science or the mysterious realm of magic. Instead, he advocates for this balanced view, what he calls perfectly average.
Right.
It allows him to appreciate both, the wonders of the explainable and the unexplainable. I love that image, the smear between the whiteness and the blackness. It so perfectly captures nuance, those complexities beyond simple black and white.
Right.
And then the hope for an intensely bright gray, where these seemingly opposite forces meet.
Yeah.
It suggests a desire for a much more complete and holistic understanding of reality.
I love that. And then he gives us his definition of the sixth sense. The sixth sense is to be, without a doubt, senza dubio, no doubt. And it's so straightforward, it really changes how we usually think about intuition or extrasensory perception. What do you make of that?
He's stripping away all that mystical stuff,
Yeah.
all the paranormal baggage that we usually associate with the sixth sense. He's grounding it in a state of absolute certainty, a deep inner knowing.
Right.
It's not about seeing things others can, it's about this unshakable internal conviction.
Right.
It makes me think about the role of belief and certainty in how you see the world.
That's a great point.
Uh,
Now, there's a real sense of conflict in this next one. Bright day, and I soar. How cruel that my soul is attached to this earth, and yet
there is?
it's almost like a yearning for something more, something beyond limitations.
Right. It's that stark contrast he sets up.
Yeah.
The uplifting feeling of a bright day and then the sense of being tethered.
Right.
That feeling that his very soul is bound to the earth. It creates this powerful sense of longing, and it speaks to this very human desire for transcendence, to go beyond our immediate earthly experience. It's a theme that, runs through so many philosophical and spiritual traditions.
Absolutely. Then he brings us back to something very personal. I cannot tell a lie to myself for very long. Camblin, 1974. Find something in nature that completes you and then surrender. That emphasis on honesty, a deep connection with nature, it feels significant. What are your thoughts?
That need to be honest with oneself, it seems like a core principle for him.
Yeah.
And then the instruction that follows to find something in nature that completes you and then to surrender to it that suggests a deep respect for the natural world, maybe even as a source of artistic inspiration. Like he's saying, find that spark in nature and let the creative process unfold organically.
And then he gives us what feel like some core beliefs. The light is all you need. The end is to evolve by doing the best you can. The means is to amplify what you're doing and believe in the balance. Patience and yet. Freedom again, and yet. In silence, the reality can be maintained, and the reality of the pain that I move away from. True love moves to indifference, to protect itself. That's a lot to unpack. What stands out?
Yeah, that one's dense. The phrase, the light is all you need, could be about artistic creation.
Right.
But maybe it's something more, a reference to a fundamental truth or awareness. And then the focus on evolving through effort and belief, that suggests a proactive way of living.
Yeah.
And that tension between opposites keeps reappearing. balance and freedom, silence and reality. And that statement, true love moves to indifference to protect itself.
Yeah.
It reveals a very complex understanding of those ideas, a philosophy that embraces action, but also a certain level of detachment for self-preservation.
Now, his perspective on art's purpose seems to evolve over time. Art is not just images. Art for art's sake has become art for life's sake, or art for my sake, or art for survival's sake. It's like he's moving away from that idea of art as purely aesthetic, something detached.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
I think it's a very deliberate shift.
Mm-hmm.
He rejects that pure aesthetic ideal, art for art's sake.
Mm-hmm.
And then he lists these alternatives, all of which are much more personal: art for life, for himself, for survival.
Right.
It's not just about pretty objects anymore. Art becomes a fundamental way to navigate life, to express oneself, even to endure its challenges.
It's interesting, and I love this next one. Step off the train of thought. To find the power that is no power. To do the work that is not work. To laugh the true laugh, bending is not bowing. This feels very Zen, all those paradoxes. How would you explain that to someone who doesn't know much about Zen?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, Zen often uses paradox to kind of disrupt our normal way of thinking,
Yeah.
to push us towards a more intuitive understanding. In this quote, stepping off the train of thought means letting go of that constant, logical analysis.
Right.
The power that is no power, work that is not work, suggests a state of effortless action, achieving things not through force, but by yielding. And then that distinction between bending and bowing,
Mm.
it speaks to a resilient kind of flexibility,
Right.
adapting without losing your integrity, without submitting.
There's this real sense of tension, even in the shorter ones like this.
Hmm.
Balancing and being for and against. We missed the clouds, and for a moment regretted it. Then as lightning, the mind ripped out in flashes of variations to reach the still pond. That imagery is so powerful.
But it's
What does it bring up for you?
that initial state, being for and against, it suggests an internal conflict or a complex way of seeing things. Then you have the mist clouds and that brief feeling of regret, acknowledging something lost, but then suddenly we get lightning, ripping out in flashes, and then it ends with the calm of the still pond. It suggests this rapid, transformative shift, a sudden clarity that emerges from a, storm of thoughts and ideas.
And then he gives us these instructions that are so direct. When you think, don't act. When you act, don't think. It's like about being fully in the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a reminder to be intentional,
Mm-hmm.
to avoid overthinking when you need to act,
Right.
but also to avoid acting impulsively without thinking things through. It's about choosing the right time for each.
Okay. And then there's this.
Hmm.
We talked of changing the world. He listened, then took 21 cents from his coin purse to pay for his coffee and left. It's this little snapshot of realism.
It is, and I love the contrast.
Mm-hmm.
The grand aspiration of changing the world right next to the simple act of paying for coffee.
Yeah.
It could be a reminder of everyday reality, or maybe even a bit of disillusionment. Like, what do those lofty ideals really mean when you get down to it?
And his sensory observations, they're so vivid, like this one. The cosmos waves, as me with tree leaves. Sun-heated air moves across the electrons of my skin. Sunlight reflects those greens.
Mhm.
First, white, then yellow-green, and in deep shadows, blue. It's almost like synesthesia,
Mhm.
All those details, what does it tell us about how he saw the world?
It shows this incredibly sharp awareness of his surroundings and a real gift for putting those experiences into words.
Yeah.
The personification of the cosmos, the detail about the electrons on his skin,
Right,
and then noticing those subtle color shifts.
right,
It creates a very rich experience for us as readers.
right.
And I think for you as a listener who really appreciates insightful details, this just highlights that even the ordinary can hold these really profound discoveries.
Yeah. This next one's like a little play. On the tower we set, facing the clouds, Act 1, the White Mountains, Act 2, the Cold Wind, Act 3, the lightning. We leave before the show's over.
I love that one.
It's this build-up and then this abrupt departure. What's your take?
Well, it's structured like a play,
Yeah.
Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And it creates this narrative arc,
Mhm.
the White Mountains, that serene image, then the wind picks up, and then bam, lightning.
Right.
And then leaving before it's over, that adds a little mystery.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about experiencing the intensity, but not wanting to be overwhelmed by it.
Interesting. And then this really grounded image. The rain-soaked willows brought me to my senses. Nature as restorative. What's your sense of his relationship with the natural world?
Well, being rain-soaked, it suggests a cleansing.
Yeah.
Like being fully immersed and then a return to clarity brought me to my senses.
Right.
It reinforces that idea of nature as this grounding force for him.
I love this. He walked by so slow that my writing slowed, my heart and also the wind. That's such a powerful sense of presence.
It really is.
What does that communicate to you?
It's the slowing effect. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's like the presence of this person had a physical impact. Not just on his actions, his writing slowed down, but on his heartbeat, even on how he perceived the wind. It speaks to a very real, almost tangible presence.
This next one is interesting. It's so short. There is one joy that exceeds all other, and that's all I'll say. So much is left unsaid. What do you think he's doing there?
He's definitely leaving it up to us, to the listener,
Yeah,
declaring that there's this ultimate joy, but refusing to say more.
right.
It creates mystery, makes you think about what that joy might be for you.
Yeah, I like that. This was a subtle sensory experience. Not a leaf moves, and yet we all feel the cool breeze. It's like a shared awareness.
It is.
What does it tell us about how we experience the world?
It points to those experiences that go beyond what we can directly see.
Right.
A sensitivity to subtle changes, a kind of collective awareness, almost subconscious.
Now, this shows a very clear preference. Much better than arguing is to look at my watercolor palette. It's a gentle statement, but it speaks volumes. Art and contemplation over conflict.
I agree. It positions creation and appreciating art as far more fulfilling than pointless debate.
Yeah.
It's choosing constructive engagement over conflict.
Then we have this one. White is light. Black is absence of light. But
Oh.
people are seeing. Well, that's enough about me, Mother Nature. Let's talk about you. What did you think of my last picture?
It's kind of funny, that sudden shift. What do you think he's going for there?
It's funny and revealing.
Yeah.
He starts with this objective statement about light.
Right.
Then he connects it to people, how they're seen.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, it's all about him and his art, even addressing Mother Nature as his critic.
Yeah.
It's playful, maybe a little self-deprecating, shows how he's engaging with his creative process, his place in the world.
Okay, and this feels like a snapshot. 5 thoughts crashed at South Blovey and Mandel. 1, a girl in a white dress. 2, Jomo board. 3, Mother Nature. 4, painting a classroom in the ghetto. 5, haiku, no one was injured. It was like a glimpse into his mind, right? That rapid-fire flow of ideas. What's your take? It's a wonderful little glimpse into how our minds work, how all these random thoughts can just pop up.
Yeah.
And I love the line at the end that no one was injured.
Yeah.
It adds a touch of humor, reminding us that these fleeting thoughts, they're often harmless.
Okay, here are some contrasting approaches to ending arguments. When you end an argument with pessimist, you say, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
With an optimist, you say, it's a banana.
Mm-hmm.
As people move away from us, do they diminish in our eyes, or mind, or relativity? What do these strategies in the question tell us?
Those strategies are pretty clever, right? Pointing out the different ways people see things. But that question that follows, it gets at something deep.
Right.
Does how we perceive others change when they move away, physically or emotionally? Is it about our literal viewpoint, how we remember them, or even some deeper relativistic effect?
Yeah.
It shows how interested he is in the subjective nature of experience.
And then there's this paradox. My attempts to stop arguing created an argument. That's so relatable, isn't it? What does it tell us about conflict?
It's something we've all experienced.
Right.
It highlights how our efforts to manage conflict, sometimes they backfire.
Yeah.
It's ironic. Trying to suppress an argument can actually escalate it.
Now, here's a point about communication. If you argue, or if you agree, you may learn, but you do not communicate. So he's distinguishing between exchange of ideas and actual understanding. What do you think he means?
He's saying that real communication goes beyond just trading information or just agreeing or disagreeing.
Right.
It needs a deeper level of connection, empathy, understanding. And that doesn't always happen, even when we think we've learned something.
It's interesting, and this one feels almost allegorical. The gate stays open, the fence is broken. He keeps searching, but does not know the size of his quarry.
Yeah.
And he has faith. He looks in all directions. If he could only see all around all at once. It's like this endless search without a clear goal.
Right. That open gate, broken fence, it suggests a lack of boundaries. This person keeps searching but doesn't even know what he's really looking for. But he has faith. And wanting to see everything all at once speaks to that desire for complete understanding.
It's an interesting image. Now, this is his take on change. Revolution leads to changes. Evolution is change. The first will be man's misunderstanding. The second is understanding. The balance will be found in our minds, individually now, perhaps collectively later. He sees a big difference between those two. How do you see that distinction?
I think he sees revolution as potentially superficial,
Okay.
leading to changes that might not be based on real understanding.
Right.
Evolution, on the other hand, that's a deeper change. It comes from genuine understanding.
Okay.
And that idea that balance starts in individual minds with the potential to spread, it suggests a gradual internal process.
It's a common saying, but it might have a deeper meaning for him. You never miss the water until the wells run dry.
True.
It's about appreciating what we have before it's gone, right?
Absolutely. It's a very human tendency to take things for granted. And I think in the context of all his other observations about time and being present, it's a reminder to value what we have now.
Right. Now, this observation is quite striking. 6 starlings sitting among broken branches. Look, no buds are growing.
It's stuff.
There's a real sense of barrenness.
There is that image of broken branches and no new growth.
Yeah.
It evokes a feeling of stagnation, maybe even a dead end.
Now, we come to this long entry from his sketchbook labeled Brian Sketchbook 6. And it's just this outpouring of observations, reflections, poor fish trapped by the changing tides to wanting to come back as a fly, vivid descriptions of nature, warnings, and a really random assortment of images and phrases. Fragility, escape, sensory experiences, mortality, mythology, personal reflections, philosophical musings, even cosmic timescales. It's like an unfiltered look into his mind. Given how long and dense it is, what key insights or themes do you see?
It's a remarkable piece of writing, just this raw, unfiltered glimpse into his thoughts. The way it jumps between subjects mirrors how our minds work, bouncing between ideas.
Right.
Some themes stand out. A real fascination with nature, its cycles.
Right.
But also reflections on human existence and death,
Right.
often through myths and art history. And there's a strong sense of interconnectedness, even between things that seem unrelated.
Yeah.
He even questions the nature of art itself. Canvas, rectangle, summer light, calligraphy, mystic and complete. And the fragmented nature of it, I think it makes it even more powerful. We
Yeah.
get this direct access to his stream of consciousness.
Now, this is what he says about artistic freedom. The artist today is the only free agent. He is not committed except so much as he desires it. We may be moving to a participatory type of art. Religion. Belief. If I believe in ghosts, I don't have to see one. If I believe it's art, then it is. If I believe that I am completely dealer, then I can't be convinced I'm not. Faith can aid and hinder, so can discipline, so can communication, so can being in Camblin circa 1968. Art is and it isn't, and now everyone knows, love. Art, if experienced, no description is necessary, but often making out is confused with love, and feeling good is not always art. It's quite a statement. It's almost like he's linking artistic freedom with belief itself.
It is. He's claiming this unique freedom for artists in our society, and he equates it to the power of belief.
Okay.
Like what we believe can shape reality,
Right.
and even determine what art is. The analogies he makes with religion, belief in ghosts show how subjective experience can be.
Yeah.
And mentioning a move toward participatory art suggests a changing dynamic between artist and audience. And then the distinction between real love and its imitations, that emphasizes his focus on authenticity.
Right. Now he brings up this concept, resist and submit, held in perfect balance. And there's the figure 4 idea. It almost sounds like his formula for navigating life.
Yeah.
How do you interpret that balance of opposites?
It's about finding an equilibrium,
Okay.
knowing when to push, when to yield.
Right.
The figure 4 sequence, with its repetitions, variations, it's a process of trial and error, of adapting.
Right.
And that last part, step off the train of thought, takes us back to going beyond linear thinking.
This next observation is, well, a little cynical. Historians love artistic madness when it isn't alive and well in attending meetings. It's like he's poking fun at how we romanticize eccentricity. What's funny about that?
The humor is in the contrast. Artistic madness is celebrated by historians, but only when it's safely in the past. The suggestion is that in the present, it's a different story,
Right.
especially if it disrupts things, like meetings.
Here's his advice on perception. We can train ourselves to open instead of close the circuits of perception. Believing and knowing are different. Most people practice a belief or a religion. They were raised in mystics. Know something else. They remain connected to a faith or abandon it, but they have been somewhere and logic won't make the trip. One must look for the balance of intuition and logic. He's drawing a line between what we're taught and direct experience.
Mm.
How important was that distinction to him, do you think?
I think it was fundamental to his whole approach.
Okay.
He's urging us to cultivate an open mind, to see the world without preconceptions.
Right.
And he contrasts inherited beliefs with that direct experiential knowledge he sees in mystics.
Right.
Knowledge that goes beyond logic.
Right.
This focus on experience and the balance of intuition and logic likely shaped his art.
This is a very unique take on history. History is believable when it is creative. Awareness can soften the shock. Familiarity allows us to participate. Creativity allows us to go beyond. Cynicism is a type of creativity gone destructive and ego-oriented. We all are creative, but we lose our magic in understanding everything instead of knowing.
He's suggesting creativity isn't just for artists. How so?
He's saying that dry, factual history might not be as impactful.
Okay.
A creative interpretation might resonate more.
Right.
He sees creativity as a way to go beyond a detached awareness, to really engage with the past.
No.
And that warning about cynicism, it's a reminder that even creativity needs the right intention.
Okay. Now, these instructions are full of paradoxes. Pushing up. Slowly, as a tree-growing effort of will, see the master heaping up the small things. No blame, draw, teach, search, reveal, always framed in paradox. What do you think he's saying?
It's a balance. Like the slow growth of a tree, needing both patience and will.
Right.
See the master heaping up a small things. It's just learning and creating through gradual steps. That's right. And no blame. That's so important.
Yeah.
It encourages experimentation without fear.
Okay.
And then the final actions, draw, teach, search, reveal, all framed in paradox.
Yeah.
It emphasizes his multifaceted approach.
Now, he gets into his thoughts about what he calls eccentric works. He says, one must go back to the unknown and naive approach to art. We have been seduced by history, critics, and a very affluent but weird culture. There are no nuances remaining in the world. Identification is the aesthetic. Pass quickly on to the next slide, please. A critic is a legless man who teaches running. What is he criticizing here?
He's really disillusioned with what he sees as a shallow, trend-driven art world.
Right.
That call to return to a naive approach, it's a longing for something more authentic.
Okay.
And when he says identification is the aesthetic, it implies a very surface-level engagement.
Right.